This is not a story about art, but about what happens when art consumes everything.
In 1904, in the picturesque, yet unassuming town of Figueres, nestled in the rugged beauty of Catalonia, a child was born whose name would forever change the world of art: Salvador Dali. Even as a child, Dali was different. While other children laughed and played in the streets, he sat apart, lost in a sketchbook filled with strange creatures and dreamlike landscapes. For him, drawing was not just a pastime, but a gateway into another reality. But shadows fell over his childhood. An older brother, also named Salvador, had died before he was born. His family, still grieving, saw in the newborn a kind of rebirth. Dali grew up with the heavy burden of being a replacement, a living echo of a lost child. This sense of strangeness, of being set apart, isolated him deeply. And yet, this very loneliness became his greatest source of strength. In the quiet corners of his imagination, Dali found refuge. His sketchbook became his sanctuary, his private world of freedom. And it was his mother who first recognized this extraordinary gift. With her gentle encouragement, Dali began to believe that his inner visions could one day change the outer world. With his mother's support, Dali took his first formal steps as an artist. He entered the Academy of Fine Arts in Madrid, but the rigid rules and cold traditions of the institution could not tame his spirit. Even as a teenager, he experimented wildly with colors, forms, and techniques. He dressed differently, spoke provocatively, and carried himself with an eccentric air that set him apart from the others. His teachers, however, did not see brilliance. They saw arrogance. They called him eccentric, disrespectful, annoyed, even mad. The conflict grew sharper with every passing year, until finally, the academy expelled him. For most, this would have been the end of a dream. But for Dali, it was the spark of a new beginning. Determined, standing defiant, he made himself a promise. I will shock the world with my paintings. It was not just a declaration. It was a war cry, a vow that pushed him out of Madrid, beyond Spain, to the place where old rules were breaking and new worlds of art were being created. Paris. Paris in the 1930s. A city intoxicated with creativity, where cafes buzzed with poets, painters, and dreamers. Amid the smoke and noise, Salvador Dali found his stage. Here he was no longer just a student of art, but a provocateur, a visionary searching for a new language of expression. While the world still clung to realism and impressionism, Dali painted visions that seemed to come directly from the subconscious. Melting clocks stretched across barren landscapes, faces and bodies twisted into impossible forms. His canvases were windows into dreams, unsettling, yet mesmerizing. The peak of this era was the persistence of memory, where time itself appeared to dissolve. The world was fascinated, but also divided. Critics ridiculed him, calling his works sick, absurd, incomprehensible. For Dali, it was another low point, yet one he refused
but the
to
technique
surrender
is
to.
groundbreaking. I
The
fail to
turning
see the
point
artistic
came when
merit.
Andre
You're missing the
Breton,
entire point. It's
leader
about
of the
subversion.
surrealist movement, recognized his genius. Dali was welcomed into their circle. From outsider to pioneer, he had become not only a surrealist, he became the very face of surrealism. Behind every revolutionary artist, there is often a great love. For Salvador Dali, that love was gala. When he first saw her, he was electrified, captivated by her elegance, her intelligence, and the mysterious aura that surrounded her. In her presence, Dali felt both vulnerable and alive in a way he had never experienced before. But their love began as a scandal. Gala was already married, and society judged their relationship harshly. For Dali, it was a time of uncertainty, a low point filled with fear of losing her forever. Yet Gala made a daring choice. She left her old life behind and chose Dali. It was a turning point that changed everything. From that moment, she was not only his lover, but his muse, his manager, his anchor. She became the queen of his world, the source of endless inspiration. From then on, the name Dali was rarely spoken without Gala's. Together, they blurred the lines between love and art, passion and creation. She was not just part of his life, she became the heartbeat of his genius. As war swept across Europe, Dali and Gala fled to America. For many artists, exile meant silence, but for Dali, it was the beginning of a new stage, one brighter and louder than ever before. New York embraced him with open arms.
The decades of the 1950s and 60s witnessed Dali at the absolute zenith of his eccentricity.
The skyline glittered, galleries overflowed, and the press adored his eccentric charm. Dali had found not just safety, but a new kind of stage. America was ready for Dali, and Dali was ready to conquer America. Yet not all voices praised him. European artists mocked him, calling him commercial, a traitor to pure art. It was a painful blow, a moment of doubt. But Dali turned the criticism into fuel. If they called him commercial, then he would become larger than life. And he did. His exhibitions drew thousands, his face appeared on magazine covers, and his collaborations crossed into film and entertainment. One of his boldest experiments was with Walt Disney, the surreal short film Destino, where dreams and animation fused into something extraordinary. Dali had transformed from outsider to icon, not just an artist, but a pop star of the art world. Dali's later years were marked by both triumph and sorrow. His greatest achievement was the opening of the Dali Museum in Figueres, a surreal cathedral of imagination that he designed himself. Thousands of visitors poured in, marveling at the dreamlike building filled with his works. For Dali, it was the ultimate recognition of his genius, the pinnacle of a life devoted to art. But soon came his darkest hour. In 1982, his beloved Gala, his muse, his queen, his eternal companion, passed away. With her death, Dali lost not only the love of his life, but also the anchor of his existence. He withdrew from the world, frail and broken, spending his final years in solitude. Yet even as his body weakened, his legacy grew stronger. On January 23, 1989, Salvador Dali died in Figueres and was laid to rest in the heart of his own museum. It was the final turning point. From a man once called mad, emerged an immortal legend. Today, millions journey to his museum. His paintings hang in the world's greatest galleries. His visions live on in books, on screens.
Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel.
And tell us, which great personality should we present to you next?
And in the minds of dreamers everywhere, Dali reminds us that the limits of reality are nothing more than the edges of imagination.
This early childhood, however, was shadowed by a silent absence. A haunting presence, his elder brother,